Alright, so in this video we're going to be going over CSS corners, borders, and shadows. So let's begin. So starting with the CSS corners, the CSS border radius property defines the radius of an element's corner. The border radius property can have from 1 to 4 values. In this example we're going to be using the 4 values. So the first value applies to the top left-hand corner, which the second value applies to the top right-hand corner, which you can see a little bit more of a slope. The third value applies to the bottom right-hand corner, and the fourth value applies to the bottom left-hand corner. So in this example, you can see I've used the border radius 15 pixel by 50 by 30 by 5. So you can see the 15 on the top left-hand side right here. And then the 50 pixel, which you can see is more of a rounded edge on the top right-hand side. And then the 30 is going to be on the bottom right. And then the 5 pixel is going to be on the bottom left-hand side, which you can see it's not as rounded with using the 5 pixel there. So we can also use 3 values instead of the 4. In this example, I'm using the border radius 15 by 50 by 30. So when we apply the 3 values, the first value applies to the top left-hand corner, which we can see. The second value takes on the top right-hand side as well as the bottom left-hand side. So you can see that the top right and the bottom left are going to have the same exact corners. And then the third value, which is the 30, is going to be applied to our bottom right-hand side right here. Alright, so we can actually use 2 values for our corners as well. So when we're using 2 values, the first value applies to the top left as well as the bottom right. And then with the second value, which I've applied 50 for this one again, is going to be the top right-hand side as well as the bottom left-hand side. And so you can see that they are paired up with kind of the diagonal cross from each other when we use 2 values. And also we can use 1 value when it comes to our CSS corners. When using 1 value, the value applies to all 4 corners, which are rounded equally. So in this example, we've used the 15 pixels right here, and you can see each side of my box here is the same exact roundness as all the other ones. Alright, so one thing, we can use the pixels in our border radius, but one thing that's kind of cool is we can actually use percentages as well. So in this example, using the percentages, you can also achieve a perfect circle using the following. So you can see here I've used a border radius of 50%. And so that gives us the 50% of basically taking each side and doing it by 50 and making our perfect circle here in this example. In order to set additional radiuses on our corners, we can use a / between our values to get an elliptical corner. So here in this example, I've used the border radius 10 pixel by 100 pixel, and I got my / 120 pixel right here. And this allows us to enable us to have these additional curves within our boxes, if that's something that is going to be required in our projects. CSS borders. So this is going to be the next one we're going to discuss. So the CSS border, we use a border style property which specifies what kind of border to display. And some of the borders that we can display is a dotted border, a dashed border, a solid border, a double border, a groove border, which in these ones it displays a 3D grooved border, but the effect depends on the border color, as well as on a ridge border. Same thing, it depends on the color of it to get our 3D effect. An inset border depends on the color. The outset border, depends on the color as well to get our 3D effect. We can also do a none for our border, which obviously displays no border, and a hidden border, which again, it will show no border, it'll be hidden. Alright, so for these examples, I've noted for the first one, we got our dotted, which is our border up here on top. And then we're going to have our dashed, which is going to be our second one here. Our solid border, our double border, our grooved border, a ridged border, my inset border, and outset border. And I've noticed with the inset and the outset, it's in examples of this one, you can use it for buttons, and whenever you go to click a certain button, you can make it look like it clicks in and then comes back out, which is kind of cool. Alright, so CSS border widths. So we can change the individual sides of a border's width by using this border width example and using the 4 different values. So like the corners, when using border widths, you're able to set a specific border width to each side. The first number, or the first value, just like with the corners, we're going to start with the top is going to be your first value. The right hand side is going to be your second value. The bottom is going to be your third value. And the fourth is going to be your left hand value. So here in this example, I've used 10 pixels, which you can see on the top here. And then 20 is what I used for the right hand side, so you can see it get a little thicker. And then the 30 is on the bottom, and our 50 is going to be on the left hand side. So it gives you an example of the widths and thicknesses and what we can do with all the different sides to get different effects. Alright, so here's some of the examples that I've used here. So we can do a solid border with a 7 pixel width, which you can see it's kind of like a bolded border here. A solid border with a medium width. So we can also use a small, medium, and large when we're setting our borders to get the different widths in there as well. And then our third example is a dotted border with a 3 pixel width, which you can make them bigger. A dotted border with a thick width, which it looks, as you can tell, it's a little bit bigger. A double border with a 15 pixel width, so you can see our double border here. And then a double border with a thick width down below here. And then a solid width with a border with 4 different thickness settings. We did the 2 pixel on top, 10 pixel on the right hand side, 4 pixel on the bottom, and then 20 pixels on the left hand side. Alright, so we can also do CSS border colors. Border colors can be set by specific color names, hex values, RGB values, or as transparent. Like the widths, you're able to set specific colors to border sides with the first value as the top, second value as the right hand side, third value as the bottom, and fourth value as the right hand side. Using the example from the border width example that I used, you can see down below that I've done the border dash color with blue, green, red, and yellow. And this, when using colors on these, when you looked at the first one, it didn't really give much of a 3D effect, but when you use the colors, you can see how it kind of creates a box image by just adding that color effect to it. CSS border individual sides, so we can use that within the same line, and we can also pinpoint each border side by specifying border top style, border right style, border bottom style, and border left style. So the same can also be done using the different border types on the same line using border style. So here in this example, I've used the individual sides to show that you can use different borders for each side depending on what you want to do. So for my top one, I used the solid. On the right hand side, I did the dashed. The bottom side, I did the double. And on the left hand side here, I did the ridge. So, and then you could also do the same exact thing by having it on the same line using the border style, solid, dashed, double, and ridge, just back to back like that. Alright, you can also write the border's width, style, and color within the one line using the following example. So here I did the 10 pixels with a dashed border and the color blue. You can kind of see here. So the width is always the first value, then the style would be in the second value, and then the color being the third value. Alright, so one of my favorites is the CSS text shadows. When using a text shadow, the first value is for the horizontal shadow. The second is for the vertical shadow. The third is for the shadow blur. And then the fourth is for the shadow's color. So here in this example, you can see I did a light blue, and then I had a black back right here. And I did a 4 for the horizontal, 4 for the vertical, and then I did black for the color on this. So it makes it pop out just a little bit. And then using negative numbers, we can actually make it go to the left-hand side and have it go up. So here I did a -4 to make it go 4 pixels to the left, and then -4 for the pixels to go 4 pixels up, and still have the black color for this one right here. Cool thing that we can do, knowing what we know now with the negatives and the positives and how it moves the shadow within our words and our letters, we can make it actually outline our words within our CSS and our web pages. So here you can see that I have moved it out by 4, and then I had a 0, so it just pushes it out to the left-hand side. And then I did a vertical, which is going up, so you have the top covered. And then I did a 4 pixel going to the right-hand side, and then 4 going down. So this will enable us to make a kind of like a border or something around our letters to make it all encased like that, which is kind of cool. Alright, so this example is showing the shadow that we can do as well. So we know when we're doing shadows, when we want something or our letters or boxes or images to come up off of the page further, we want to use a blur to kind of indicate light getting underneath the letters to kind of pop it off the page a little bit. So here I used our 4 pixels by 4 pixels to get our shadow coming out to the bottom right hand side, and then I did 10 pixels for our blur to kind of get it to look like it's coming up off of the page a little bit with using our black color still here. One cool thing that we can do as well is when we're using the text shadow, we can actually use the same color letters as our background and still have it stand out, and kind of adds a cool effect like that. Alright, one cool thing we can do too, so using the text shadow here, we can actually add more shadows on top of one another using our commas in order for us to continue out our shadows to give us some box lettering, which you can kind of see how it has like the lighter shades on top with the darker shades on bottom, as if the light is getting shadowed like that. So kind of gives a cool effect of having the block letters and really standing up off of the page. Alright, CSX box shadow. So kind of the same thing with the letters. Basically everything is all identical as well. So when we're using our box shadow, in this example I used a 15 pixel by 15 pixel. And so when we use the two values, the default, usually in the previous one I did black, but as default it just gives you a black shadow unless you specifies otherwise. And so I used a 15 by 15, so that's going to do our horizontal right and then vertical down, as you can see here in this example. Alright, and again, when we use our negative values, -15 by -15, our horizontal is actually going to go to the left, and our vertical is going to go up when we use our negative values here. Alright, and then here's with our fade added in, and I added a gray to make it look like it's coming up off of the page a little bit more. So it's kind of a cool thing there. Inset, we'll kind of go over this a little bit here. So this kind of makes it so our box looks like it's been pressed like a button, so you can have this little the top side and the left hand side here using our 15 by 15 pixel and setting the condition to color to gray. One cool thing we can do is adding multiple lines as well here. So it has the shadow effect, and you can see how it kind of fades as it goes. And then here is all my information for